All right, so today you were going over the Algebra EOC review. It was the second paper that we're working on here, and it was the bottom half of the paper. You were doing questions. It was numbers 9, 10, 11, 12, just that bottom half. Hopefully you guys had enough time to go through and work through all of it, but if you didn't, you can finish it later, because if you joined late or if you need extra time, this paper, the attachment is also in Schoology, so you're more than welcome to keep working on it. But I'm going to show you guys the answer key really quickly so you can check your work. It's the bottom half, numbers 9, 10, 11, 12. Yesterday we did the 1 through 8. So if you needed, if you weren't on the meeting yesterday, you'll have to go back and watch that video to see the questions and everything like that and the answers if there was anything. But go ahead and check your answers. And just a little reminder, make sure you hold on to all of these review papers all together, because at the end of the quarter, you're going to submit it in one submission spot for 2 test grades. So it's pretty important. It's a big grade for this class. It should just be a little easy A. I don't want it to lower your grade. It should be an easy A since we're doing little by little. And yes, it's a lot. We're going to be doing it almost every day. We've done it 4 times this week. So please don't lose it. Keep it all organized. If you think you're going to lose it, take a picture of it, but don't do anything with those pictures. Just hold on to them. Don't delete them. And then at the end, you can submit everything together at once. Okay? So hopefully that's enough time for you guys to go over the answers and to check your work. Do you guys want me to go over any of those questions from numbers 9, 10, 11, 12 from the stuff today? Or if you're good, you can tell me you're good in the chat. Give me a thumbs up in the chat. Or if you need a couple more seconds to keep checking your answers, go ahead and type in the chat. Tell me if you guys are good. You don't need me to go over any. Or if you want me to go over any, tell me which question you would like me to go over. Or if you need a little bit more time to keep checking your answers, let me know. But I'll wait a couple of seconds here, let you guys finish checking if you need to. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with our stuff for today since I don't see anything in the chat there for the kickoff. You can always send me a message and I can work with you one-on-one later too. If you realize, oh, I do have questions, or oh, I needed a little bit more time, I can go back to the answers at the end. But I'm going to go ahead and get started on the assignment for today, which is on my screen here. It's the factoring trinomials with a leading coefficient greater than 1. We took the notes on this yesterday, so if you missed the notes, go back and watch that video. Check the notes and everything, because it's the same topic for today. And for this assignment, there's a total of 15 questions on this paper. I'm not going to have you go through and do all of these because it's a lot of questions, and it does take a little bit of time to go through because it's trial and error. You're picking some numbers. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I'm just going to have you guys go through and do the even numbers only. The even numbers only. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and ending there because it stops. But go ahead and pick. I'm going to go through and do, I guess, 2 questions with you guys. Pick 1 question from the top half of the paper and 1 question from the bottom half of the paper. And go ahead and type it in the chat which 2 questions you guys would like me to go over. 1 from the top and then 1 from the bottom. Go ahead and type in the chat. Tell me which 2 you would like me to go over. Just to get you guys started. I don't think we went over anything from the bottom half of this assignment in our notes yesterday, so I highly recommend picking at least one of the ones from the bottom. Okay, so I see, is that 14 and 4? Is that what I'm understanding? 4 and 14. Okay. And then a 6. I'm just going to circle all the ones you guys type in there, and then I can kind of pick and choose whichever ones I think are the best choice. Are there any others you guys think you would like me to go over? Number 2. I'm just kind of circling all the ones you guys write in there, because I can't go over all of them. There's only 7 questions that you guys are going to be doing on your own. So I'm only going to do 1 from the top and 1 from the bottom. All right, so looks like from the bottom portion, I'm going to be doing number 14. Let's go ahead and see here this top section, either 2, 4, or 6. Do you guys have a preference if I do number 2, 4, or 6? Or do you just want me to choose? Because I can pick. I'm looking at my stuff here. I would think probably number 6, since that's bigger numbers. I know usually when there's the bigger numbers, larger numbers is where people tend to make mistakes. Because there's a lot more options there. So I'm thinking probably number 6 from the top half. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started going over these. And remember, you're doing all of the even numbers for your assignment. So yes, you're also going to be doing the ones that I'm doing on the screen today here. So make sure you show all of your work every single time, all that stuff. Your directions for the top half of the paper here, it says factor each polynomial, check your answers by distributing. I'm going to go through and do number 6. Number 6. So just like our notes yesterday, the first thing I wanted you guys to do is to draw your X puzzle. So here's my X puzzle. And we need to find 2 numbers. That's this number here, this number here. We don't know yet. These 2 numbers, they need to multiply to A times C. Remember, it's A, B, C. And what is A times C? Be careful with your signs there. What is A times C? Make sure you look at the sign in front of it as well. Go ahead and type in the chat, please. What is A times C? So the number times that other number. Be careful with the signs. And I see someone wrote a negative 72. Negative 72. Let's check. A is positive 9. C is a negative 8. So, yep, 9 times negative 8 is negative 72. Perfect. And then we need to find those 2 numbers. They also need to add to what? What do they need to add to? Add to what? Yep, they need to add to B. And for this one here, number 6, B is positive 6. So here's my 6. So these 2 numbers on the left and on the right, the 2 question marks, those 2 numbers, they're going to multiply to a negative 72, and they're also going to add to a positive 6. Okay, so we're going to be doing a bunch of trial and error. We're going to try a whole bunch of different numbers until we get those 2 perfect numbers that multiply to a negative 72, add to positive 6. So go ahead and tell me, what are some numbers that I can multiply to get a negative 72? And an easy way to do this is do 72 divided by, just type in a number, and then you'll get equals another number. If it's a decimal, then no, you can't multiply those numbers together. But if you get a whole number, that means these 2 numbers multiply, to that negative 72. Okay, so that's an easier way to kind of check it in your calculator. So go ahead and tell me, what 2 numbers can we multiply to get a negative 72? We're going to be doing a bunch of trial and error. We're going to make mistakes. It's not going to be perfect on the first try. Just tell me any 2 random numbers that we can multiply and get a negative 72. Don't even worry about the adding to 6 part. Okay, so I see a 1 times negative 72. Let's type that or write that down. 1 times negative 72. Yes, 1 times negative 72 is negative 72. Now let's add those 2 numbers. 1 plus negative 72. We end up with a negative 71. We're looking for, when we add them together, we want a positive 6. We know it's for sure not 1 and negative 72. So I'm going to write that down so I can remember that I already tried them. So I put it over here on the right. It's not that. So let's try again. Let's plug in 2 different numbers. We could do, if you want, you can also change around your signs. So we did 1 times negative 72. You could also do negative 1 times 72. We can just move our sign to a different spot. Sometimes that's the only little change we have to do. Because we know negative 1 times positive 72 is negative 72. But if we add those 2 numbers together, negative 1 plus 72, we get 71. Again, that's not positive 6. Okay, so let's keep on going. We did a negative 1 and a positive 72. So it wasn't that either. So 2 times negative 72, we're not going to get a negative 72. But you can do, since negative 72 is an even number, Plug into your calculator negative 72 divided by 2, and then tell me what you get. Because you should get another number. So that means those two numbers you should be able to multiply together to get a negative 72. And it's going to be trial and error. It's going to take a little bit of time. That's why I only picked a couple of questions to do for this assignment. Let's think. 2 times what would be a negative 72? And remember, plug this into your calculator here. Negative 72 divided by whatever number. We're doing a 2. And then tell me, what does it equal? Negative 72 divided by 2. If you get a whole number, that means those two numbers work. But if you get a decimal, it doesn't work. So if you plug it into your calculator, negative 72 divided by 2, you would get a negative 36. Okay, so let's try that out. If we multiply 2 times negative 36, yes, we get a negative 72. But if we add those numbers together, we don't get a positive 6. So it's not that. You can also try switching your signs around. Negative 2 times positive 36, yes, that's negative 72. But again, when you add them, we don't get a positive 6. So the 2 and 36 don't work. 2 and 36, nope, they don't work. And then I see in the chat here, we've got 12 times negative 6. Let's try that. 12 times a negative 6. Okay, tell me in the chat. 12 times negative 6. Does that equal negative 72? 12 times negative 6. Does that equal negative 72? Yes. Perfect. Okay, that equals negative 72 when we multiply those numbers. What do we get when we add those numbers together? 12 plus negative 6. What do you get when you add 12 plus negative 6? Tell me, what does that equal? 6. Perfect. It equals a positive 6. So yes, we're going to use these two numbers here in the circles, a positive 12 and a negative 6. Okay, so we're going to rewrite this problem. We're going to split up this one in the middle. Okay, so the first term, the 9p squared, stays the same. And then the last term, the negative 8, stays the same. Okay, this term in the middle here, this 6p, this one's going to be split up. And it helps if you draw these arrows like I'm doing here. We're going to split it up. We're going to use a 12 and a negative 6. But remember, it also has that variable p. So first I'm going to do my plus 12p. And then I'll do my minus 6p. Because if we were to combine these together, we would end up with a plus 6p. Okay, so that's the same thing. 12p minus 6p is the same thing as 6p. We're just writing it in a different way. Okay, so now that we have 4 terms, we're going to factor by grouping, which is, I think we did this before spring break, where you draw in your parentheses, the little tiny plus sign in between, and we're going to factor something out of here from our first set of parentheses. So here's my first set of parentheses again. And let's look at just our numbers, just the coefficients. What number can I factor out of the 9 and the 12? What is the GCF, greatest common factor, from 9 and 12? So think 9 divided by what and 12 divided by what? What's the biggest number I can divide both of those by? I see 3, perfect. 9 divided by 3, 12 divided by 3. Yes, that works. So here's my 3. Let's go ahead and divide. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is positive 4. Perfect. Okay, let's look at our variables now. Can I take out the variable p? Can I factor out the variable p? Yes, I can. The only way you can do that is if you have it at every term, and we do here in the first set of parentheses. So let's go ahead and factor out the variable p. You want to factor out the smallest exponent. So that's the exponent of invisible 1. So now let's do our division. P to the power of 2 divided by p to the power of 1. just subtract your exponents. 2 minus 1 is 1. Okay, so that one's done. Now let's look at our other one. P to the power of 1 divided by P to the power of 1. Subtract your exponents. 1 minus 1 is 0. Okay, so we've done our factoring. Let's clean it up if we can. Okay, so looking at our first one here, if you have an exponent of 1, you can erase it. Or if you have a coefficient of 1, most of the time you can erase it. Sometimes you can't if there's nothing else left. And then also if you have an exponent of 0, you need to clean it up. So this one here, the first one that I underlined, the 3p to the power of 1, we can erase that 1. The exponent of 1 is invisible. And then our next one here, that 3p to the power of 1, I can also erase that 1. It's invisible. And our last one here, 4p to the power of 0. Anything to the power of 0 is really equal to what? Go ahead and type in the chat. What is anything to the power of 0 equal? 1. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and change this here to a times 1. And then anything times 1, is that anything? Or you can multiply, go one step further. 4 times 1 is 4. So I just erased that 1. So we're left with 3p and then parentheses 3p plus 4. Okay, so that one's done. I'm going to scoot my parentheses over a little bit. And then let's factor out our second set of parentheses here. I'm going to leave some space. We're factoring out from here. If this is 3p plus 4, that means this also needs to be 3p plus 4. Okay, so we need to think, what can we divide these by? This negative 6p minus 8 divided by what would be the 3p plus 4? It might help if you look at your constants. That's the ones with no variables. So let's think. Negative 8 divided by what would be a positive 4? Negative 8 divided by what would be a positive 4? The 3 arrows I'm pointing to here. Negative 8 divided by what is positive 4? Go ahead and type in the chat. Tell me negative 8 divided by what is positive 4? What would we divide by? Tell me if it's a positive or a negative. I see a negative 2. Let's try that out, because if you're not too sure, you can always write it down and double check. Let's see a negative 2. Okay, negative 8 divided by negative 2. Negative divided by negative is positive. Good. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Perfect. Okay, so that's actually all you have to do. Since there's no variables next to the 8, there's no variables next to the 4, you don't even really need to worry about the rest of it there. I mean, you can double check your coefficients. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 is positive 3. It works out. You don't even need to look at your variables. Okay, so that's just another little easy way to get through it a little bit quicker. Okay, so from there, we're going to factor out one more time for our final answer here. We're going to factor out this 3p plus 4. Okay, we're going to factor this out, and you can put it in either set of parentheses. I'm just going to throw it in here to the first one, 3p plus 4. I factored those out. What's going to go here in the second set of parentheses? What can I put there to finish writing out my final answer? What's going to go in the second set of parentheses for my final answer? Write out the whole thing. Just look and see. What are we left with in this step right here? We're left with this and this. So just put those two next to each other. I see 3p minus 2. Perfect. 3p minus 2. And then you are all finished. That would be your final answer. Your directions also say check your answer by distributing. So just do the FOIL method first, outer, inner, last. I'm not going to do that because you guys know how to do that. Check your work. Make sure you did it correct. But we did this question together, so I don't need you to FOIL on number 6. Because I know it's correct. We did it together. But all the other questions that you're doing on your own, please go through and FOIL it to check your work to make sure that you did it correct, okay? Because you don't even need an answer key. You're going to be your own answer key. But that is it for number 6. Hopefully you guys feel good about that. But if you need more practice, go through and look at the notes again from yesterday, or you can send me a message. Let's go on to the bottom half of the paper here for numbers 10 through 15. It says, for your directions, factor each polynomial, look for a GCF first. So we're going to do number 14 because that's what you guys picked. Number 14. So this is pretty much the same thing. There's just one extra step in the very, very beginning, which is factoring out a GCF. So I'm going to draw my parentheses, and we're going to factor something out of here first. So let's look at just our numbers, 20, 55, and 30. We need to think 20 divided by what, 55 divided by what, and 30 divided by what? What's the GCF, greatest common factor, or the biggest number that I can divide all three of those by? And it's easier if you look and focus on your smaller number, the 20. Think of all of your options. You can do 20 divided by 1, divide by 2, divide by 4, divide by 5, divide by 10, and then your numbers start repeating. So check and see which number can we divide all of these by. You can even do trial and error. Someone said 5. Let's see. Let's try out a 5. 20 divided by 5. Yeah, we can do that. 55 divided by 5. Yes. 30 divided by 5. Yep, it works. And that is actually the largest number, the GCF, that we can divide all of these by. So let's go ahead and clean it up. We've got 20 divided by 5 is 4. And then our next one, 55 divided by 5 is positive 11. And then what am I going to put in this last spot here, in that last circle? What would I put there? Tell me if it's a plus or a minus that number. Go ahead and factor out the 5. And tell me, what do I put inside this circle here with the question mark? What would I put there? Plus or minus what number? I see a plus 6. Let's see. 30 divided by 5 is, yes, positive 6. Perfect. Okay, so we factored out our number. Let's see if we can factor out any variables. So here's an x, here's an x. Can I factor out the variable x from number 14? I see a yes. I see other people typing. Yes. Okay, so remember, in order to factor out a variable, think about it. Does it need to be at every single term? It does need to be at every single term. Do we have an x at every term? Here's a term, here's a term, here's a term. I don't have an x at every single term, so can I factor out the variable x? No, the correct answer is no. I cannot factor out the variable x because we don't have an x at every single term. Okay, so I'm just going to bring those down, rewrite them in the same exact spot. So this x squared, it's in the first term, so I'm going to leave it here, x squared. And then the x, it's at the second term, so I just drag it down. And there's no x's here, so that one's fine. Okay, so we factored out that 5. And then from there, everything else is pretty much the same that we just did above, and same thing from our notes yesterday. You just have this one extra step in the very, very beginning, and then everything else is the same, okay? But from here, you might write it a little bit differently. So let's go ahead and start writing it out. So normally you would do, let's go ahead and start setting up our X puzzle. We need to see what is A times C. A times C. 4 times 6 is 24. Okay, 24. We need to find two numbers that multiply to 24 and then they add to 11. So go ahead and think, what two numbers can we multiply to a positive 24? And then when you add those numbers together, we get 11. And I'll give you guys like a minute or two to think about it. If you're not too sure, you can type in two numbers that you know for sure they multiply to 24. And then we'll check and see together. So go ahead and just tell me, what two numbers can you multiply to get a 24? You can always do 1 times that number. So let's try that. 1 times 24 is 24, but 1 plus 24, it's not 11. So it wouldn't be that. What else could we multiply to get 24? And yes, these are challenging questions. It's going to take a little bit of trial and error. You're going to make mistakes. I see a 2 times 12. Let's see. 2 times 12. Yes, 2 times 12 is 24. But 2 plus 12, it's not 11. So we're going to need a different set of numbers. We already did 1 and 24, 2 and 12. We did 1 and 24, 2 and 12. And if you flip them around, it's still the same thing, 24 and 1, 12 and 2. So we don't want to do that. Let's think of completely different numbers. What else could we multiply to get a 24? I see an 8 times 3. Let's try that out. 8 times 3. Let's see. 8 times 3 is 24. Yes, that works. And then 8 plus 3. It's 11. Yay, that works. So that's our 2 numbers we're going to use here, positive 8 and a positive 3. Okay, so when you're writing out from the bottom half of your paper, you're going to need to use some brackets because you don't want to have like double sets of parentheses. So let's go ahead and start writing it out. Here's my 5, and then I have a bracket. We're doing a bracket. You'll see why in just a second. This is only for the bottom half of your paper. I'm going to rewrite my first term, the 4x squared, and my last one, the plus 6. Then here's my bracket. Again, it's like a hard turn parentheses. Okay, and then I'm going to take this 11x and I'm going to split this one up with a plus 8x and a plus 3x. So here's my plus 8x and here's my plus 3x because 8x plus 3x is 11x. Okay, we just split it up into 2 different terms. And then from there, factor by grouping. Here's my first set of parentheses and the second set of parentheses with the tiny plus sign in between. This is why I have you guys put brackets here and here, because if you didn't, you would have another set of parentheses stacked on top of each other, and it looks weird. It's a little confusing. You might lose a parentheses, and it does change your answer. So make sure you use brackets to keep it nice and organized. Okay, that's just for the bottom half of the paper. And let's keep on going here. And when you do this, just keep dragging down that 5 and the brackets. And we're going to factor out from the first set of parentheses. Let's look at just our numbers, the coefficient. What can I factor out here? 4 divided by what? And 8 divided by what? What's the GCF, greatest common factor, of 4 and 8? What's the largest number I can divide both of those by? 4 divided by what and 8 divided by what? For this one, 4. Perfect. So here's my 4. Let's go ahead and factor it out. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is positive 2. Okay, and then looking at our variables, here we have an x and an x. That means we can factor out an x, smallest exponent of 1. Let's go ahead and divide. X to the power of 2 divided by x to the power of 1. Subtract your exponents. 2 minus 1 is 1. And then our other one here, x to the power of 1 divided by x to the power of 1. Subtract 1 minus 1 is 0. Okay, so now let's clean it up. This 4x to the power of 1. If you have an exponent of 1, it's invisible. We don't need it, so I'm going to erase it. And then my next one here. The x to the power of 1, I can erase the exponent of 1. That's invisible. We don't need to see it. Same thing with the coefficient of 1. We also don't need to have it there, okay? So I'm just going to erase that. And then our last one here, we have this x to the power of 0. Anything to the power of 0 is really equal to 1. And then anything times 1 is just that anything. 2 times 1 is 2, so I just erased it. So we're left with this 4x parentheses x plus 2. Okay, so that one's done. Let's factor out our second set. Here's my next set of parentheses. If this is x plus 2, this is also x plus 2. Okay, so let's see. What do we need to divide by? Okay, remember, it's a little bit easier if you just look at your constant, the ones with no variables. The 6 divided by what is positive 2? 6 divided by what is positive 2? It's an easier way to check it. 6 divided by what would be a positive 2? I see a 3. Tell me if it's a positive or a negative 3, because we have to put a sign in front of it. Either a plus sign or a minus sign. Tell me if it's a positive 3 or negative 3. I see positive. Perfect. It's a positive 3. So make sure you put plus 3. And then double check. 6 divided by 3 is positive 2. Awesome. That's it. You can even double check here. 3 divided by 3 is the invisible 1. So awesome. That's good. Let's go ahead and finish our factoring. Here's my other bracket. So again, our final answer, setting it up. There's my brackets. First set of parentheses, second set of parentheses, and closing out my brackets. Okay, we're factoring out this x plus 2. So here's my x plus 2. We factored that out. What am I going to put here in the second set of parentheses for my final answer? You can go ahead and type out the whole entire thing. What would I put for my final answer there in that second set of parentheses? All I'm left with is 4x plus 3. So yep, that's going to go in our last set, 4x plus 3. And then there you go. That is your final answer here for number 14. Okay, I'm going to zoom out so you guys can see the whole thing here really quickly. And remember, you're doing all of the even numbers, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. I already did number 6 and number 14. You need to have those ones done and then all the other ones. Make sure you show all of your work, take a picture, submit on Schoology, and then that is it for today. We'll meet again next week. If you guys have questions, you can stay on the chat, ask me here, or send me a message. But if not, then have a good weekend, have a good day, and I'll see you guys on Monday. Just make sure you type something in the chat before you leave.